So, good morning. Good morning. Not very enthusiastic. Good morning. No, it's too much. Hi is too much. Good morning is better. Just for those, how many of you were here for just this last thing? It was good? It's very good. I just want to let you know that my hair played Steve's hair in 1976. So I had, because you just can't, you can't manufacture this sort of luxurious look. I'm Chris Breen with Macworld. For those of you who just went, oh, that's who that is. I have no idea who that guy is up there. So we're going to talk about mountain lion today. But first I have to give you the big talk about mountain lion, and then we'll give the little talk about mountain lion. How many of you are using mountain lion now? Okay, how many of you are using snow leopard now? How many of you deeply resent the move from snow leopard to lion and then to mountain lion? Yeah, nobody does that. I sort of do. I kind of hate it, but I'm not willing to let everybody else know that I hate it, so I just hate it this much. Well, what I want to start with is the big picture, which is why mountain lion and how significant mountain lion is and how significant lion was before it. Essentially, take a look at this and that and this and that and this and that. So, those of you who know about this stuff know that I just alternated between iOS and macOS, and you see that there are an awful lot of similarities. One of the things that lion means is that we have taken a serious departure, that we've had stages of macOS development over time. So, when we started out, the first thing we had was the Mac OS. So if you had 128K Mac, the original one with the cute packaging, you started out with the original Mac OS, and that went all the way up to Mac OS 9. If you were to take a magical microscope and you were to look at the last version of Mac OS 9 and look at the code base, if you knew where to look, you would go all the way back and you'd find stuff that had been put into the original Mac OS. So what Apple was trying to do is they were expanding the capabilities of the Mac OS, but they were basically building it on sand. So here's sort of this shaky foundation that was fine if you had like a ranch house and no earthquakes. And those of you from out of town, earthquake, no sweat. Promise, we checked ahead. Forecast is for no earthquakes for the next 6 days. So that was fine. You could build your ranch house and it was steady. And then Apple said, well, yeah, but we need to add on a garage. Okay, that's fine, that'll work. Now we're going to put a second story on there. Yeah, okay, that's all right. And they kept adding and adding and adding and adding it. And finally, it was this enormous thing that with just the slightest tremor, it would crash, as you all knew, until you rebuilt the desktop. And then it was perfect forever. That's an old-time Mac joke. So that was our first iteration. At that time, then Apple said, okay, we've got to come up with a new operating system. We need something that's solid and multi-user. And so they looked back to Linux. They found some ex-Apple employee who was kicking around and said, would you mind if we bought your operating system? And maybe you could come in and run the company for us. And he said, yeah, no. And then they had to call him the next week and ask again. He said, okay, I'll do it. So we got OS X. So OS X is built on Linux, much more solid. It is a multi-user interface, so unlike OS 9, you could technically do that. It was really kludgy and you didn't want to do it because bad things would happen. But with OS X, you could switch back and forth between accounts and everything was great. Everybody had their own little environment they worked in, and that was good too. So, have Unix. Then we get Lion and Mountain Lion. Now, people might say that this is just another extension of OS X. When OS X first came out, there was OS X 10.0, which was crap. Nobody used it except the enthusiast, who didn't want to do real work. It's just like, you want to see how this thing works, and then it explodes, and terrible things happen. And then OS 10.1, which was less crap, but still not great. And then OS 10.2 got, that's where the people who were holding out on OS 9, not all of you, of course, because some of you still haven't changed. But some people thought, okay, well, this is workable. It's like my old Mac, and it's more solid, and I can keep it running for days, and it doesn't crash, so that's good. So from then, OS 2, 10.2, 10.3, 10.4, 10.5, each and every time, Steve and his pals would come out on stage, and they'd say, look at these really cool features. And they'd have, 3,000 features, and every one of them was like, wow, that is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. So they did that with 10.5. That's good. Then 10.6 comes out, and they call it Snow Leopard instead of Leopard. And so it's like, what's that? Well, it's less expensive, and it has fewer features, except we did a bunch of stuff under the hood. So some people believe that Snow Leopard is like the pinnacle of the Mac OS, because it really is the pure Mac OS. There's no influence of iOS. It's just the real deal. So some people have chosen to stick with that. Then comes Lion, which harkened back in a way to sort of Mac OS 10.0's crap roots, in that it was kind of funky and unstable, and it did bad things. And for the dyed-in-the-wool Mac users, they started to see traces of iOS in Mac OS. And Apple did this intentionally. They talked about it being back to the Mac, which just means that their engineering team goes over to the iOS side of the building, which is over here, right here. And they work on a bunch of stuff, and they learn a bunch of lessons. And then they ship that version, and they keep some of them here to keep it in, keep in training over here, keep that maintained over here. And then they walk back over to the OS 10 side, which is here. And then they say, we learned a bunch of stuff over there, and so what we'd like to do is incorporate that stuff in here. And the people who were already there said, well, that sounds like a good idea, let's do that. So there was a lot of it, and then they work over here and say, but let's take this lesson back over here. And then they said, we learned something over there, and let's do this over here. So what they kept doing is more and more this integration of the two operating systems, which to some people is dumbing down and not pleasant. But the primary things here are that Apple is starting to unify its operating systems, and for a couple of reasons. One is they're changing their focus. Many years ago, Apple was talking about the digital hub. And what that meant was your Mac was the brains of the outfit. It was the core of the hub. And then you dangle stuff off it. So your iPhone would be hanging off it, your camera would hang off it, your camcorder would hang off it, your musical equipment would hang off it. And so in this sort of octopudal way, here was the Mac and then stuff. And Apple said, this is good. This is the way we want things to be. Hang stuff off here, this is the brains of the outfit. So it was still very much a compartmentalized ecosystem, if I must use that word. That's no longer the case. Now the case is your stuff. So this is your pictures, this is your movies, this is your music, these are your documents. And it's not about the Mac anymore. Instead, any device that you use, computer, iOS device, the web, anything that you interact with is just a window on your stuff. So in this case, my iPhone is a little window on my stuff. My iPad, it's a slightly bigger window on my stuff. My Mac, when I put it on a huge display, is a bigger window on my stuff. And this display screen is an enormous window on my stuff, but it's still my stuff. So I take a picture on this thing. Through iCloud, it's synced up to my Mac. Then it's taken over to the web. Then it's taken to my iPad. Then it's somewhere else. Or I'm working in Pages and I'm writing a document here on my phone. Well, I don't know why I would, but I might. So do that. It's synced up to the cloud. Now it's here, left where it was when I last used it. So I can continue working here. Later I pick up my iPad because you can tell I just sort of wander around it randomly. Here it is here, I can type on it here. So it's just my stuff. I don't care where I originally created it. I don't care where it is. So hierarchy has become less important. If you look at your phone, or you look at your iPad, or you look at your iPod Touch, where are your files? Somewhere. But where? I mean, which folder are they in? Doesn't matter. They are in a folder, but it's hidden from you. You don't care where it is. Instead, it's just somewhere inside, saved inside your application. So focus of where your stuff is in the hierarchy is less important. The hierarchy used to be paramount to us. We cared so much about which folder, which in which directory, and down you go until you finally find your files. Not so much. We're doing less and less of that now. If you look at the media browsers inside the iLife applications, You don't know where those documents are. You just know, oh, here are my pictures. Or in Mountain Lion, and it's not a feature that I propose, or I'm a proponent of, but the All My Files thing, when you go in there and you see 17 trillion files, you don't care where they are. You just want to be able to find what you want. So search becomes part of this, and it's important. The other thing they're doing is changing input. So we grew up, anybody here, is there a 4-year-old in the crowd? No, okay. So we grew up with a mouse and a keyboard. That was important because that was the way it was done. Speaking of 4-year-olds, if you give an iOS device to a 4-year-old, if you want to stretch it to 6, that's okay. Down to 2, a little low. So we'll take 4 as the means. Give it to a 4-year-old and say, here, I've turned it on, and you want to do things, and you just tap things, and it will happen. And they go, okay. Leave them for half an hour, and they will come back and check on it and say, how you doing? And they will be able to show you that they can navigate around this device pretty easily. Wait 6 months, so they're 4.5 now. They've had some living, some seasoning. And now, sit them in front of your Mac and turn it on and say, okay, I've got a mouse and I've got a keyboard. And what I want you to do is I want you to open this application here, but you have to move this thing and double click on that. And then it's going to open and you're going to see this window thing. And then it's, you know, that thing that was an arrow, it's not an arrow anymore. Now instead it's cursor. And so you're going to take this cursor and you're going to click it over here. And then you have to know how to, do you know how to type? No. Okay, well, start learning to type. And then we're going to save it. Well, where's it going to go? Oh, it's going to go on the cloud. What the hell? So, the point being, a 4-year-old will put up with it because of their attention span issues. They will put up with that for 2 minutes. And they will turn to you in the nicest way possible and say, this is poo-poo. Because they don't know how to say crap. So they say, this is poo-poo. And they're right. It is poo-poo because that you have introduced to them this insane concept of this abstraction layer. So, in order for me to do something on my computer, I have to manipulate this object over here that manipulates this thing over here. You only do this at the carnival when you're trying to get those little fuzzy things out of the machine that you can't get because it's rigged. So if you were to walk through life with a mechanical claw to do everything that you need to do, oh, I'm going to pick up this book. No, I can't just do this. I have to do this, to do this, to do this, to pick up the book. You want to turn a page? You can't do this. You have to get the mechanical claw to do that or to push a button, which makes no sense. We've been doing it forever, so we think, of course, that's the right way to do it, but it's not necessarily. Of course, there are places where a mouse and keyboard make a ton of sense. People who don't speak well, dictation is not good for you. Using this little tiny keyboard, particularly on a phone, is not good for you. If you're doing really delicate work, for example, if my doctor is going through some MRI and using this massive thing with touch that doesn't really have much resolution on it, I'm not so sure that I want him to do that. I would much rather he had a little mouse and could really zero in on this pimple on my lung. So, one thing we are doing, and Apple is doing more of, it's more touch, because there are places where it makes so much more sense. My mother's husband, who was 102 years old, was reading books on an iPad. And, you know, he's not really a technical guy. But he put it in front of him and said, here's a book. Read it. He had no idea how to use this thing. And he got to the bottom of the page and he did this. And he turned the page. Because that's what you do. So this is what Apple is moving toward. It's a touch interface where you do things as you do them in the normal way, in the kind of way you would manipulate real-world objects. So anybody who's objecting to this touch brought to the OS, who has a problem with disappearing file hierarchy, I understand. I've been a Mac user forever. But there's a method behind it. So what's wrong with the old way? First of all, if you cling to the ways that things were, and many of us do because we've been doing this a long time, you are not Apple's customer, or you will not be Apple's customer soon. Because that's the old way. The iOS is increasingly the entry point for people using Apple hardware. So if Apple were to deign to release numbers on the kind of customers they have, and they do sort of through their financials, you would see an increasing number of people who are starting with one of these. And once they've used these, again, like the iPod was, this is the gateway drug to the Mac. And so they use this, And then they go to the Mac, and they want that same kind of experience. So they want things like Launchpad. The rest of us look at Launchpad and go, that is maybe the dumbest way to find an application on your Mac, because you could use Spotlight, you could go to the dock, you can create hierarchical folders and put them in the dock, but no. These people want to be able to go to Launchpad and go, this is just like this, and that's what I'm going to use. So increasingly you see this stuff integrated. So it isn't just that Apple is attempting to turn the whole idea of computer use on its head, but it's also looking forward because this is their business. People want the same experience here, and as much as Apple can do that, they're going to do that. So, that was that bit. Okay, so all that said, let's change some stuff so that we can get rid of some of the annoying parts of Mountain Lion. Oh, that's what that's for. Okay. So, about that leather interface. There's this application called Mountain Tweaks. I should probably check with you guys. There are things here that I don't want to show. All right. That's okay. So what I'm going to do is Mountain Tweaks has a series of things. So you go to the Mountain Lion Tweaks tab here, and you can change the leather look. So I'm going to remove the leather. I'm actually going to restore it because I've changed it. Anybody like the leather look in contacts and calendars, by the way? Anybody wild about that? You? Yes, and one person in this room likes that. Okay, well, good on you. All right, now let's see if that worked. Hang on, I swear to you, this works. There, okay. So, there it is. Look at all that leather up there. Stitching, little torn paper thing. Somebody spent a lot of time on that. That person has been fired. By the way, I'm sporting the Apple look today, the untucked shirt thing. I don't know if that's hip or not, but yeah, that's what Apple does, so I'm following their lead. Okay, so anyway, we've got this leather look here, and if you go to Mountain Tweaks, which is here, you have the opportunity to remove leather from contacts, and you remove leather from calendar. And I want to get rid of it from calendar, so I will quit calendar. And I will say, yes, please get rid of that. And so what it's doing actually is it's, underneath this, there's a series of graphic images that create this leather look. So probably through an Apple script, what it's doing is it's taking the leather images out and it's substituting these metal images instead. So I continue. Installs, I enter my password that says no, that's not it. I close that, and then I launch Calendar. And there we have this much cleaner look here. And this is probably something you're going to see in the next version of OS 10. I have to think that when Johnny Ives takes over, that whole leather thing is going to be gone. But for the time being, if it's something that drives you to distraction, you don't feel like you should have to replicate leather look in your application, you can use Mountain Lion Tweak, and that will take care of that, or Mountain Tweaks. All right. Oh, since we're doing a presentation on this thing, I'm going to go into System Preferences. How many of you do presentations on your Mac? Okay. If you don't know this trick, this is one I hope that you will pick up. Because there's a thing that when you reach a certain age, and I'm just telling those of you who aren't of a certain age, your eyes, when you turn 40, the minute after you turn 40, your eyes just go and you can't see anything. And that's when you get these things. And they help for a while, but Turns out the warranty on your eyes is pretty terrible after the age of 40. So you can't see so much as you once could. So you go into accessibility, then you go into display. And if you're doing a presentation, please, please, please look at the cursor size slider and use it. Because when you do, those people who have reached a certain age and therefore deserve your respect will then be able to see things, and they will be very happy, and they will appreciate it, and they will stay in the room when you do things, when you increase the size. So I will increase the size a little bit so it's a little better, not quite. This is a bit much. But unless you really, really want to point to something, or you have something you want to hide on your screen, you can kind of put that over there and it will hide that area of the screen. While we are in system preferences, how many of you frequent internet forums? Yeah, nobody's proud of that either. One guy, yes, I do, I visit. The rest of them are like, no, I'm anonymous, nobody knows who I am. But that's what I do. Okay, so we are going to go into keyboard preferences. I will then go to the keyboard tab. I'm going to select modifier keys. The reason I mention going into internet forums, if you have visited any internet forums or any comment threads in the last couple of years, you're aware that there's a certain protocol. And the protocol is that I'm always right, and if I type in all caps, that proves how right I am. So this is your opportunity to be a polite person and try to go against this thread, where that you are not a impolite person. Instead, you want to be a polite person. And the best way to do that is to go here and then turn off caps lock. Here's your caps lock key next to your A key, and you just set that to no action. That means, even if you're not on internet forums or comment threads, it means that every time you accidentally slip off the A key and hit the caps lock key and you're not aware of it, and suddenly you're typing in all caps and it drives you nuts, or worse, you're trying to enter a password and you're typing in all caps and it says no, and you can put no, but it's my password and I'm... You know, people who know this stuff will say, yes, but it shows you a little caps lock key in the password field, indicating that you've got the caps lock key on, and it doesn't matter because by that time you're so angry you can only see that it's not taking on your password. So turn off the caps lock key unless you use it. I don't use it for any reason, but again, if you're a comment thread veteran, you may want to leave it on because that's how you communicate to the rest of the world. We are now going to go to the Finder. No, we are not going to go to the Finder. We're going to go to this Finder. Okay. So you're conducting a search on your Mac. When you conduct a search on your Mac, you pull up the find command, which is Command F. And as you know, you can create a number of different search options. Now, normally, you do not see this option, system files. So when you search using Command F, or if you use Spotlight, if you're looking for something like a preference file, an application support file, something that more advanced users like to mess around with. So for example, you need to find a preference file because there's some kind of weird corruption in an application. And people like me will say, well, just throw out the preference file. And you go, okay, how do I find that thing? And if you type it into the find field, you won't find it because they don't give you access to this stuff natively. So the idea is once you pulled up a find window, you go to the kind menu and then you choose other. And this will show you a huge number of things that you can search for. Now, in my case, if I hadn't turned it on already, I would look for system. When I find that, I have an option for system files. So what this allows you to do, when you do any kind of search, it will go beyond the standard search. It will look inside your user library folder. It will look inside the main library folder at the root of your hard drive. It will not look in other users' accounts in any way. So it's still secure in that sense. You're not going to be able to explore somebody else's user account on that machine, but you can find all the files, mostly, that you would typically want to get to. And that's the way to turn that on. So next time you need to find a preference file or something you know the exact name of, choose system files, and you have the option of are included or not included. So by default, it's aren't included, so you get the standard search. But if you want to dig deeper, then you just pull up that are included, and then you can have access to that stuff. Speaking of digging down into things, we're going to go to mail. Wow, there's a new Justin Bieber album out. That's awesome. Does anybody have that? Is it good? Any 12-year-olds in the audience? No? Okay. My daughter wants to know. But what is that look of his? I don't get that, sort of looking off to the side there. What? It's like, what? Okay, so I want to create a rule in here based on more than just the standard stuff. So in this case, I would go up to Mail, Preferences, and then into Rules. So when you add a rule, you can search by stuff. You know, lots of things in here. So if you're serious into mail, you can filter by a lot of different things. And the reason you do this is you want to create up certain rules so that if you receive a certain kind of message, that it will then be deleted or will be put into another mailbox or something like that. But what if you want to really dig down and find the geeky stuff in there? Well, in this case, let's go back to our message that we had, this Justin Bieber message. And I'll go to Message, and then I want to look at wherever it is. Come on, you. It told me on my slide it was there. There's my message. Well, this is awkward. Huh? You? What about me? Oh, view. Oh, yeah, and I missed the gate. Oh, yeah. Okay, so I want to look at all headers. So when you look at all headers, you find a bunch of different information in here. So it's more than just who it's from and who it's to, but you get things like X broadcast ID, that if you care about this, list unsubscribe. There's lots and lots of stuff in here. So what you can do is you can pull some of this stuff out of here, like take one of these headers. Then you go into Preference, then you add your rule, and down at the bottom, you choose Edit Header List. At that point, for example, I've already created one here. You click on the plus button. You enter whatever that header is. So this can be very specific information that it's a certain kind of attachment that's on here, or it came from a certain IP address. You can add that there, click on OK, and then once you've done that, you can filter by something that is much more exacting. So in this case, this MIME version option here. Again, it's for mail geeks. Note, you want to go to the View menu to find that All Headers command. I'm sorry that you were all so slow in getting to that and to tell me how to actually do my presentation. But anyway, this now becomes a filter. And you can create a number of these things. So keep clicking that plus button, and you will find various headers there. You can add these, and then you can create some very complex rules within mail. Oh, speaking of mail, let's go back there. So now the Reminders app. So let's say I've got this iBookstore message here. I'm going to grab that and take it over to Reminders and put it in a reminder. So what I've done here, instead of receiving an email message and say, oh, I need to remind myself about that, look at the email message, open Reminders, and then type in the email message. You can simply grab the email message that you want to bring over as some kind of reminder, click on its heading, and drag it into any one of your lists. Once you do that, it provides you with the subject heading for your reminder. So in this case, you know, what's new on iTunes, this isn't terribly important to me because I don't care about that new Justin Bieber album. However, it becomes more interesting if the subject heading is all hands meeting at work on Tuesday. So instead of having to manually type that in, I can just drag that over and it becomes that kind of reminder. Okay. I don't know how many of you are tidy? Anybody tidy about your desktop? Better answer, no, that's the wrong question. How many of you are complete pigs when it comes to your desktop? As am I. So, let me do this. I'm going to make a few duplicates here. Let's just create one on the desktop. Okay, and I'm going to create an empty desktop folder. And I'm going to launch Automator. How many people have not ever launched Automator in their entire lives? Okay, and the rest of you are lying. I know, it's like GarageBand, right? Yeah, I launched it. Once. Oh, come on. All right, so we're going to launch Automator. I'm going to create a service, and I will click on Choose. So first thing I'm going to do is go to Files and Folders, and I'm going to get specified Finder items. Then I'm going to get folder contents. Drag this guy down here, and then I am going to move Finder items. So the specified Finder item I want is my desktop folder. Okay, so what I've done is I've added this as the source for this place to look at. In this case, Automator considers this to be a folder, so anything within there is going to be called upon by the get folder contents command. And I'm going to move that Finder item, once it's collected, to my stuff. Not to the desktop, and I do it just that way. And then when I click on Run, all the stuff disappeared because it went into my stuff, and there it is. So what I normally do is I create one folder within my desktop, or within my Documents folder. I have a 2-monitor setup. When I can no longer tell what the desktop background is, I run this. So I wish I were lying, but I'm not. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to call it, clear this up. I will save it. And I'll quit Automator. We'll take these things and we'll drag them back out again, and we'll put them in here. Now, if the gods are looking kindly upon me, which they are not, what should happen is within my services menu, there should be that action. It should show up, I would select it, and I would clear it. I could do this by logging out and logging back in. It will then show up. One other thing you may want to do with this is go to System Preferences. You want to go to Keyboard Shortcuts. Look in Services. And then any service that you've created, you can assign a keyboard shortcut to. So you can click on here, for example, and then you can add a shortcut to it. So what this allows you to do is if you've created this service, you can then just invoke it with a keyboard shortcut. So you could be Command, Option, Control, C, for example, to clear the desktop, and it will shove everything into the folder that you've configured. I have 5 minutes, okay. One other Automator thing, since we're talking about Automator. Should I really try to do this as a service? Yes, I'll try and see what happens. Okay, so we've created a service. We're going to click on Choose. And I'm going to search for new reminder items. I drag that into my workflow. That's what I did wrong. Okay, and then I'm going to choose No Input. So this will work in any application. I will then click on Options and choose Show this action when the workflow runs. And I will then save this. And we'll find out if the gods now smile. Yes, okay, good. So I can quit out of here. I'm in Finder, choose Services, New Reminder, Yeah, that's fine. And now I have a new reminder option. So it just pops up that window. I can then configure the reminder as I like. I can add a name for it. I can add a date for it. I can add a due date, the priority, anything I like to do. Then I can save it and it will become a reminder. I can also assign a keyboard shortcut to this as well. So if you find it inconvenient to create a reminder by opening up the Reminders app and doing all that work here, regardless of where you are, you can be working in any application. You can be in Word, you can be in Pages, you can be in the Finder, anywhere. Just invoke that keyboard shortcut, and this Reminders window will pop up. You can enter the quick reminder, save it, and then it will go into your Reminders. And I think this last thing will do it. You guys learning anything from this? Yeah, sorry. Oh, so what's the difference between a reminder and a calendar? Oh, okay, so the question is, why would you do it in a reminder instead of in a calendar? Well, one thing is that under Mountain Lion, under the new system, you're going to have things pop up in your reminders. They can send you alerts. Calendars can do the same kind of thing, but mostly it's sort of how people distinguish a calendar appointment to a to-do. So kind of any case where you used a to-do in the old days is what you use a reminder for now. Also, you can choose when you're syncing this stuff through iCloud to separately sync those. You may not want to sync your reminders because you only care about being reminded on something on your computer, but you do want to sync your calendar events or vice versa. So it gives you a little more flexibility in the way you use these things. Okay, so this is very quick. The Option key, and this finger right here, is very helpful when you have these menu bar items up here in the corner. So, for example, I just click on Wi-Fi. That's not terribly interesting. But if I hold down the Option key and click on Wi-Fi, I learn a whole bunch of stuff about the network. So you can see what the transmission rate is. You can see, I mean, again, this is sort of like geek stuff. You may look at this and go, I have no idea what that means. And that's fine, because you can just show it to your other geeks friends and say, hey, look at that. And they'll go, wow, you're really good. But don't, and if they ask you what that means, you say, much too complicated, don't have time, won't show it to you now. Same thing, sound control, volume up and down, not terribly interesting, but if you hold down the Option key, you have the opportunity to choose your output devices, your input devices, and you can easily open the sound preference, system preference. Because I do podcasting for Macworld and a bunch of other stuff, I use audio a lot, and I have multiple devices plugged into the input and several speakers and headphones into the output. If you have that kind of configuration where you're constantly mucking around with sound devices, this is a really easy and short way to get where you want to go. Also, the battery, hold down the Option key there, and you can learn something about this. Mostly, if you find that your laptop is running out of power very quickly, hold down the Option key, click on the battery, because then you can find out how the condition of the battery is. It should say normal. That may be a lie, but it should say normal. But oftentimes I find if I'm running short of energy, power on this thing, I power it, I charge the thing up, and it's good for about 12 minutes. And then it means your battery's dead, or it's certainly on its way out. And this bar will indicate whether it is or not. And finally, lastly, but not leastly, because that's perfect, so here are your notifications. I will turn them on for now, because I didn't want this beeping up here. But as you probably know, you can click on Notifications, scroll that direction, and then you click on Off so that this thing doesn't wake you up in the middle of the night if you happen to be in the same room with it, or you just don't like being annoyed by your computer. The shortcut to that is hold down the Option key and click on Notifications. And that mutes notifications for 24 hours. They'll come back on after that. And that's it. So it's lozenge time for me. Will.i.am is going to be up here shortly. Oh, thank you. And I'm going to pimp one session I'm doing later today because I'm going to be interviewing a guy named Blue, B-L-E-U. He's a fabulous songwriter and musician. He's written for Demi Lovato and some famous people. He's really, 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 really good. And just because he's writing music now doesn't mean that he writes certain kinds of music that you may not like. This guy can cop Van Morrison, Paul McCartney, others. He's amazing. So if you have time, please come to that. In the meantime, thank you very much for coming to this.